I'm here to share with you a little bit about my story. I'm a mom, I'm a former teacher, and now I'm a safety advocate, a school safety advocate. And I spend a lot of time with this question here. Is our school safe? Is it safe to send my kids in? A lot of parents, a lot of teachers, a lot of students and community members ask this question. For all those reasons and all those questions, my family chose the town of Newtown to raise our family. We lived in Newtown for 7 years, and on this morning, December 14th, 2012, safety, sure, it was on my mind as I was sending my kids off to school, getting them ready like I did every day. But again, I had chosen this school, this town, this place. It had high test scores, it had low crime rates, and everybody knew everybody. It was a wonderful place for our family. So I was pretty comfortable that morning, getting my kids ready, feeding them breakfast, doing their hair, helping them brush their teeth, getting them dressed. And I was really proud of myself. I got them all off to school pretty uneventfully. And then the phone began to ring. I checked the caller ID to see if I was going to bother to pick it up or not, and it said Town of Newtown. And usually when I saw that, it meant that school was calling, and they were calling to let me know that I had forgotten somebody's permission slip or backpack or lunchbox or glasses or something like that. And instead I hear a recording. It's our superintendent of schools, and she says, all of our schools are in lockdown. There's been a shooting. That's all she said. I remember being stuck on that last word that she said, shooting. I couldn't really get around it. My mind started traveling back in time to stories on the news, images, footage, film of tragedies like Columbine. I was still convinced that it must be some kind of misunderstanding or false alarm or some kind of miscommunication. But out on the road that morning, my car quickly became overtaken by response vehicles. Every color, every stripe, every siren that you can imagine. I remember dutifully pulling over, letting them pass by, and ultimately just filing in behind them. I realized pretty quickly where they were taking me. They were taking me to Sandy Hook School, where two of my daughters were, one a fourth grader, one a first grader. And I would begin a long walk that morning, from the firehouse to the school, up as far as I could get before it was blocked off, and back to the firehouse and back to the school. And I would repeat this walk for hours that morning, looking for my youngest child's class, waiting to see that they had evacuated. But they never did. Just about a half an hour into the school day, when most of our kids at Sandy Hook were wrapping up their morning meeting, loud noises started ringing out in the front portion of the building. A 20-year-old male from our community, a community where there were high test scores and low crime rates, where everybody knew everybody, or so we thought. This man drove to our school after killing his mother. And he carried out one of the deadliest attacks on a school in US history, ultimately killing 20 of our precious 6 and 7-year-olds and 6 of our beloved educators. I share this with you because I believe those children and teachers that we lost that day, and the many that survived, have left us all in a position of power. If we dare to look at what they experienced and what they can teach us, then we now have the ability to do something about it, to make sure that we are better prepared to prevent, respond to, and recover from any crisis in our school or community. I remember thinking about the level of training, the level of preparedness, and wishing that we had given them so much more. Because for our children and teachers in the front portion of the school where the attacks were carried out, there wasn't time to think. There wasn't time to problem solve. There wasn't time to be creative and come up with a plan B and a plan C when plan A had failed miserably. They learned in an instant that even though they weren't trained for it, they weren't prepared for it, they didn't sign up for it. Many students and teachers that day in the building, many staff members, many parent volunteers realized they had a new job. In the blink of an eye, they became first responders. Because it's not like it is on TV, where disaster strikes, you pick up the phone, you call 911, and then the cavalry arrives instantly. It takes time. For us, it would be about 4 minutes before that cavalry could arrive after the first 911 call had been placed. And then it would take precious time for them to figure out how to make entry into the building and begin the rescue. So the true first responders, our students, our teachers, our staff members, were the least prepared that day. So even though following tragedies you hear a lot of big ideas, amazing innovations, I want you to remember something that our students and teachers taught us. Very often it's simple things that make all the difference. A piece of knowledge, a practiced action or behavior, a simple tool like a key or a tourniquet to tie off a bleeding wound. Simple things can make all the difference. We also learned to think very differently about communication. Our students and teachers couldn't do anything without information, right? Hearing these horrible sounds, lots of staff members came running in the direction of those sounds to try to figure out what was going on. Nobody was calling anything over the PA. Nobody could get to the PA. For a lot of us, it was about finding a way to make a difference. And for a small group of us in town, it was about rethinking school safety. We had to begin thinking about sending our surviving children back to school. Can you imagine how difficult that is after you have lost a child in a place that you knew was safe? We began asking tough questions. We began thinking about a new purpose. And together we formed Safe and Sound Schools, a nonprofit organization devoted to finding the best practices, resources, tools, and information for schools across the country to ensure safety, to develop, to plan for the best possible practices to make sure that school is a safe place to learn and grow. So how do we wrap our arms around it? How do we make sure that we're covering all the bases, that we're really addressing every aspect of safety in our schools? How about we bring it all together? For us at Safe and Sound, it's about the big six. These are 6 essential components of creating a comprehensive approach to planning and developing safety for schools across the United States. Each and every one of these areas is a field of its own, a science of its own, if you will. But each and every one of these comes together to support the safety of the school in a comprehensive fashion. There's some overlap, and there should be, because each of these areas is intertwined and connected when it comes to the safety of our schools and communities. You know, when I was a teacher and when I was a stay-at-home mom, safety was important to me, but I really looked at it mostly as somebody else's job. The principals, the police, the firefighters, the emergency medical folks, the school nurse, they've got it covered, right? I don't really need to focus. I don't really need to be that intimately involved in the plans in my school because it's somebody else's job. I learned too painfully that that's not the truth. Each and every one of us in the community have to be educated and have to be a part of making sure that it's safe. I think bringing it all together is key to answering the problem. There are a lot of solutions out there for the safety of our schools. But I share with you my daughter Joey, who died in the tragedy on December 14th, 2012 at Sandy Hook School with 19 of her friends and classmates and 6 of her beloved teachers. She was autistic and apraxic and loving and affectionate and truly brilliant. And one of her superpowers in this world, and I'm convinced everyone has at least one or two, but one of her superpowers was bringing people together. For a nonverbal child, she was pretty darn good at it. She had a way of bringing all kinds of people together, people that wouldn't normally spend time together, interact together, work together, and yet they did. So I take my cue from her, and I invite you to do the same. As you rethink school safety, I ask you to think about how you can be a part of it, how you can help us accomplish successful development and planning for safety in our schools. I ask you to join all of us and work to make sure that our schools are as safe as possible. I know that together we can. Thank you.